What does strength really look like? Most people think of loud voices, commanding presence, big muscles, bigger egos. They think strength is about dominance, about control. But real strength is quieter than that. It's not the person who walks into the room needing to be seen. It's the one who changes the atmosphere just by being there. That's the difference between power and presence. Power demands attention. Presence earns it without saying a word. You see, true strength doesn't need to be proven. It's not desperate to convince. It doesn't come from shouting louder than others, but from knowing exactly who you are, even in silence. It's waking up each day and moving forward when no one's watching, when nothing's easy, when everything in you wants to give up, but you don't. Not because you're fearless, but because you've learned to move with the fear instead of away from it. Stoic philosophy calls this the power of self-command, a kind of inner stillness that doesn't bend to chaos, doesn't break under pressure, and doesn't need to explain itself. Stillness is the move of the wise. It's the strength to hold your tongue when provoked, the strength to set boundaries without apology, the strength to stand your ground without needing applause. This isn't the strength of muscle, it's the strength of mind. And if you've ever felt like your calm was mistaken for weakness, let me be clear, your stillness is not emptiness. It's focus, it's restraint, it's force under control. So, in this video, we're not going to talk about flashy success. We're going to talk about 7 quiet signs that prove you are far stronger than people realize. And by the end, you'll understand why Stoic strength doesn't roar. It resonates. Let's begin. Strength isn't the absence of fear. It's what you do when fear shows up. Everyone feels it. Even the strongest people, even the calmest ones. But here's what sets you apart. You don't let fear take the wheel. You feel it rise. That tight chest, the shaky hands, the second-guessing voice in your head. And still you move forward. That's not weakness. That's not recklessness. That's courage. And not the kind that demands applause. The kind that whispers quietly to yourself, I'm scared, but I'm doing it anyway. Think back to the last time you faced something that terrified you. Maybe it was taking a new job, quitting a stable one, telling the truth when it was easier to stay silent, moving to a new city, choosing to heal after heartbreak. You didn't know what would happen next, but you knew you had to try. That's real strength. Here's a technique I want to offer you, a Stoic-inspired reflection point I call the fear checkpoint. The next time fear tries to slow you down, ask yourself, is this fear stopping me or shaping me? Because fear isn't always the enemy. Sometimes it's information, a mirror, a test. It asks, how bad do you want this? How ready are you to grow? And Stoic wisdom reminds us, courage is not loud, it's the decision to proceed anyway. So if you've ever felt afraid, but still made the move, still had the conversation, still took the risk, be proud. That wasn't recklessness. That was quiet bravery. You didn't let fear lead. You led yourself through it. And every time you do that, you build something far more valuable than fearlessness. You build resilience. You build clarity. You build the kind of strength no one can see, but everyone feels. And that is what Stoic strength looks like. Strong people don't pretend to be perfect. They don't dodge blame. They don't hide behind excuses. They do something much harder. They own it. Not because they enjoy being wrong, but because they know that strength isn't about never falling. It's about how you rise after you do. Here's the difference. Weak people take a mistake and tie it to their identity. They hear you failed and translate it as, you are a failure, but not you. You've learned to separate your error from your essence. You understand that mistakes are part of the process, not a definition, not a prison. Mistakes are information, not identity. That's a Stoic truth, and it frees you. So when you mess up, big or small, you don't spiral. You pose. You admit. You adjust. And then you move on. No theatrics. No self-sabotage. No endless apologies. You simply say, I was wrong. Here's what I learned. Let's do better. That's what real responsibility looks like. And in a world full of finger-pointing and denial, it's rare and powerful. When you take ownership, you shift from victim to creator. You stop being at the mercy of circumstance and reclaim your agency. Even more, you earn respect. People trust those who are honest about their flaws and humble enough to fix them. So, the next time you fall short, don't hide. Don't run. Don't defend what doesn't need defending. Face it. Because every time you do, you remind yourself. Your worth doesn't shrink just because you made a mistake. It grows because you had the strength to own it and the wisdom to learn from it. That's not weakness. That's leadership. And that is Stoic power in action. Here's a truth. Not everyone's ready to hear. No is a full sentence. Strong people know this. They understand that setting boundaries isn't rude. It's not cold. And it's definitely not selfish. It's self-respect. It's clarity. It's how you teach others where you end and where they cannot cross. Most people struggle with this. Why? Because we're taught to please, to accommodate, to say yes, even when it costs us our time, our energy, or our peace. But not you. You've learned the hard truth. When you say yes to everything, you end up saying no to yourself. You've felt the exhaustion, the quiet resentment, the moments where your silence became consent to things you never agreed to. And then you woke up. You realized that real strength isn't in being available to everyone. It's in being aligned with yourself. Psychology tells us boundaries aren't walls that push people away. They're doors that let the right people in with respect. Boundaries define space. They define trust. They define what is safe and sacred to you. So here's your Stoic-inspired strategy set. Communicate. Maintain without guilt. You don't need to defend every no. You don't need to over-explain. You don't need permission to protect your peace. Some people won't like it. They'll push back, call you distant, accuse you of changing. And that's okay, because boundaries are filters. The wrong people will fall away. The right ones, they'll rise to meet your standard. So the next time you feel pressured to give more than you can, pause, take a breath, and remember, your peace is not up for negotiation. Your energy is not an open buffet. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to not answer. You're allowed to leave a space that keeps demanding, without giving. Strong people don't explain boundaries. They live them, with calm, with confidence, and with quiet certainty that they're not being cruel, they're being clear. And in this world, clarity is power. Real strength doesn't always look like stoic silence or emotional armor. Sometimes it looks like saying, "I'm not okay." Sometimes it's having the courage to let someone see the parts of you that aren't polished, that aren't certain, that aren't in control. And if you've ever done that, not for pity, not for attention, but because you were done pretending, that's not weakness. That's maturity. That's power. Because vulnerability is not about oversharing. It's not about dumping every emotion on anyone who's near. That's not strength. That's leakage. Here's the distinction. Vulnerability is chosen openness. Emotional dumping is unmanaged need. Vulnerability is intentional. It's rooted in self-awareness. It says, "I trust you enough to let you in, but I don't need you to fix me." That's where the power lives. Strong people choose when to open up, who to open up to, and how much to reveal based on trust, timing, and emotional capacity. Because not everyone deserves front-row seats to your inner world. Here's a guiding question. Am I sharing to connect or to be rescued? That clarity makes all the difference. And when you do choose to share with the right person, at the right moment, with the right intent, that's not weakness. That's leadership. That's presence. That's the kind of honesty that heals. Not just you, but everyone who witnesses it. Stoic wisdom reminds us, you are not your cracks. You are the light that shines through them. So yes, you've made mistakes. You've fallen apart. You've had days where your strength felt distant. But the fact that you're still here, still trying, still showing up, still willing to be seen, that means you've already won something most people never touch. Self-respect. You don't hide your imperfections. You integrate them. You don't collapse from your emotions. You channel them. And in a world that tells you to look perfect, you dared to look real. That is strength. And it radiates. Let's be honest. Most people are energized by beginnings, by applause, by momentum that feels loud and fast and public. But what about the middle? What about the days that feel flat? The mornings when getting out of bed feels heavier than it should, the weeks where progress is invisible and no one's watching. That's where strength is built. Not on the highlight reel, but in the quiet. If you've ever kept showing up, even when motivation disappeared, you already know this kind of strength. Motivation is a spark. Discipline is firewood. Motivation gets you started. But discipline, that's what keeps you moving, especially when nothing around you feels inspiring. Maybe you've faced a silent storm, losing a job and waking up anyway to apply again. Getting your heart broken but still showing up with grace. Going through a personal crisis while pretending things are fine. You didn't announce your struggle. You didn't ask for attention. You just kept walking. That's not weakness. That's unshakable resilience. Stoic philosophy doesn't glamorize the grind, but it honors the inner commitment to keep going, even when the world gives you every reason to stop. Progress is measured in quiet steps, not applause. So if you've been moving through hard days without needing to be seen, celebrated, or even understood, know this: that's where the strongest people live. In the in-between, in the invisible effort, in the choice to try again, when no one would blame you for quitting. You don't need fireworks. you need fuel. And the good news, you've already got it. Every small, quiet, steady step is proof that you haven't given up on yourself. And that is a form of greatness most people never see because they're too busy looking for glory. But you're building something that lasts. One of the clearest signs of real strength is your ability to lift others without forgetting yourself. You've probably done it before. You listened when no one else had time. You encouraged when someone else was breaking. You gave without expecting anything in return. And yet, you didn't fall apart, because your giving came from strength, not from self-sacrifice. That's empowered giving. It's the art of helping without losing your footing. It's staying generous but not depleted, available but not absorbed. And in a world that glamorizes selflessness to the point of burnout, this kind of giving is rare. Here's the warning. Not all giving is noble. Sometimes, helping becomes a hidden attempt to feel needed. That's called the savior complex, where we try to rescue others so we don't have to face our own emptiness. And while it looks like compassion, it's often about control, validation, or avoidance. But not you. You've learned to give because you want to, not because you have to. You give with clarity, not compulsion, from a full heart, not an empty cup. Help with a full heart, not an empty cup. That's Stoic service. That's strength with boundaries. You don't give to prove your worth. You give because you're already grounded in it. And you know this truth. The strongest kind of support doesn't create dependence. It awakens strength in others. So, if you've ever held space for someone without losing your peace, if you've ever helped someone rise without carrying their life on your shoulders, you're not just strong, you're wise. Keep giving, keep showing up. But always remember, you don't have to fall apart to hold someone else together. Strong people know how to lift others while standing tall themselves. In a world that constantly tells you who to be, choosing to stay true to yourself is one of the strongest things you can do. It's easier to conform, to nod when you disagree, to play the part just to keep the peace. But you choose something different. You choose alignment over approval. And that's rare. Here's a simple but powerful question, one that strong people ask themselves often. Am I acting from truth or from approval? It cuts through the noise. Because there's a big difference between adaptability and authenticity. Adaptability is a strength. It's flexibility without compromise. It's adjusting your tone without changing your values. But authenticity, that's the root. That's knowing what you believe and refusing to trade it for likes, validation, or fitting in. Strong people understand this tension. They can bend without breaking. They can evolve without erasing who they are. You don't need to be loud about it. You don't need to argue with everyone who disagrees. You just need to live your truth calmly, consistently, and unapologetically. That's Stoic alignment. It's not about being right. It's about being real. No one can steal your peace unless you hand them your center. So, when the pressure rises to blend in, to shrink, to be more agreeable, you pause, you breathe, and you return to yourself. You ask, is this who I am, or is this who they want me to be? And you answer with action. Every time you say no to what misaligns, You say yes to yourself. That's not rebellion. That's clarity. And in a world full of masks, the one who dares to be unchanged by the crowd is the one with the deepest, quietest strength of all. So now let's look at what real strength actually sounds like. It's not always loud. It's not always seen. And it almost never asks for permission. True strength lives in the quiet choices you make, again and again, even when no one's watching. Here's what it really looks like. You dare to feel fear, but you don't let it stop you. You make mistakes, but you don't confuse them with who you are. You set boundaries, not to push people away, but to protect your peace. You open your heart, but only to those who've earned the key. You persevere, even when no one claps. You lift others without breaking yourself in the process. And above all, you stay rooted in who you are, even when the world tries to rewrite you. That's not just strength, that's mastery. Because in a world chasing noise, you've chosen presence. In a world obsessed with approval, you've chosen alignment. And in a world full of storms, you've chosen the only power that lasts. You don't have to be loud to be powerful. Stillness is its own kind of storm. Before you go, comment below. Which of these 7 signs do you see in yourself, and which one are you still working on? Tap like if you've ever had to build strength the quiet, slow, invisible way. Subscribe for more Stoic content on discipline, clarity, and quiet power. Because you don't need to shout to make an impact, you just need to stand steady. And you, my friend, are already doing just that. See you in the next video.